So hello guys, welcome back for another video. My name is Mike and welcome back to the FPL Mike channel. And today on this video we're gonna walk you through some of the best bargain players on FPL and some of the players I think it's an interesting one. It's worth a look at, and some of the players are definitely is a nah for me. So let's get straight into it. And the first bargain player we're going for, it is gonna be João Pedro. We all know how good he is when he's in Watford and how good is he last season. With how Evan Ferguson is now out due to injury, who's gonna come back in the start of October. I think João Pedro is gonna be nailed on start number 9 for Brighton. And then even when Evan Ferguson come back, he can play the number 10 role. And we know João Pedro is on penalties. We know his goal threat with the price of 5.5 million. I think it is an absolute bargain for me. So if you want to go with Haaland in your team, I think João Pedro is definitely a good third option or even second option on your front line because you want to save money for elsewhere. And I think João Pedro is definitely one to look at. And deservedly, he's very good in my opinion. And the second player also comes from Brighton, who is a 4 million defender, and that is Valentine Barco. He didn't play that much last season, but this season, I think from the preseason game Brighton have played, I think Barco will get a starting position, in my opinion. And at 4 million, he's just one that cheap defender you'll need in your team. Obviously, he'll only play when emergency when emergency situations happen on your team, like two of your defenders got injured. So I just think Barco at a starting position, who's going to start a lot of games this season for Brighton, and Brighton have improved defensively improved very. The defensive improve is very massive for me under the new coach. I think Valentine Barco is absolute bargain at 4 million, like compared to other 4 million defenders. Obviously, you can argue you have Howard Bailey's and Bednarek. All those 4 million defenders are pretty good, but I think Barco at this price with Brighton's defense, I think what Brighton defense is really making me into to get him instead of Hayward Bailey's or Leicester defender or Ipswich defender. So I think Valentine Barco for me is another bargainer player that you can look out for, and you can put it in your team. The next player is going to be a little bit interesting for me, and it is going to be Christopher Nkunku. I've got him in my team. We all see his performance at Leipzig. We all know what he can do. He's an absolute phenomenal player for me. He's got 25 plus goal involvement for Leipzig in his last season there. He didn't play very much last season. So due to injury, and I think with a whole rehabilitation time he's gonna play a lot this season. But I've got to wait and see what Chelsea's lineup looks like under an Enzo Maresca when they have the preseason warm-up game, because we know what happened in the Chelsea's locker room, right? That could be a mess there. I'm not sure whether Enzo Maresca can handle that, but if he can handle it, and I think Nkunku will definitely be in that starting 11, and he's going to play the number 10 role. Even sometimes he can play the number 9 role for me. So, yeah, Christopher Nkunku is a bargain player for me at 6.5 million. I think it's fairly to say he's the best 6.5 million midfielder if he stays fit. He's going to give you loads of good goal threat. He's going to get you good numbers, good returns. Just overall, I think Christopher Nkunku is a bargain player for me. And then we're moving on to the next player, which is going to be controversial for loads of people. And I think that's going to be Marcus Rashford. 7 million. It's been a long time. Again, we've seen Rashford with this price. With all the stuff he's done last season, how crap he is, and then recently he's got caught by the police. I think as long as if he can get his himself right, he's gonna be the major goal threat for Man United. I think last season is a downfall. Obviously, he didn't play well. Man United are crap. So I think I mean, it's hard to go worse than that, isn't it, for me? They finished eighth last season or seventh, I can't remember. But now they got Lenny Euro, they got Joshua Zirkzee, and they're even gonna get Manuel Ugarte. I think that's an upgrade, definitely. And I think if Marcus Rashford can find himself back on the right track, I think he's definitely the major threat, goal threat for Man United. Even though I hate to say I'm a Liverpool fan, but Marcus Rashford is definitely one to look out for. 7 million, if you want that cheap enabler, fairly cheap enabler in your team to get to the right, to get your team some good returns. Marcus Rashford can definitely do that. Because look at the previous season, and these 2 seasons over here, I think he's got the ability to replicate these. And I think Marcus Rashford in the Man United team is just overall is really good from me. And then another player I'm looking for, who I also got in my team, is Antonio Robinson. I think loads of people slip past through this guy because he plays for Fulham or whatever. But I think Antonio Robinson, he's attacking threat. It's just phenomenal in among all the fullbacks in FPL. I think he's probably only second to Trent Alexander-Arnold for me. 6 assists, 2 assists. We can see this guy is growing. He's growing. He's improving his ability, and he's good. He's the definite left back for Fulham, and I think Fulham, although their defense is not as good, it's not going to be as good as last season because Jalpalinia left. But I think he's attacking threat at this price, 4.5 million. It is one of those rare players that you see in this price tag. So for me, he's a bargain. He's going to be in my team. And they have solid fixtures, right? They got Leicester, Ipswich, as I say in the first video. They got fairly good fixtures. So I think Antonio Robinson is definitely going to be a bargain player if you want to go for a 4.5 million defender compared to other players like Louis Dunk. I've got Joachim Anderson. He is going to be much a goal threat among all, among all other 4.5 million defenders. And then the last player that I'm also going to stay is gonna be Brian Mbeumo. Has anybody remember him from last season? Amazing start from in the first half of the season or first few games. I think he's got 13, 11, and 16. 3 double-digit haul in 3 consecutive game weeks. But then due to injuries, he's fallen off a little bit and didn't come back to play for the last few seasons. You can see 22 stars, 9 goals, 7 assists, XG, XA match it. So he only played half the season. He got 130 points. That shows how good he is for me. And I think Brentford is always a defensively solid team. With potential Ivan Toney leaving, I think Brian Mbeumo will take more attacking responsibility in that team. And he is on penalty if Ivan Toney leaves. So we know and we see what he can do last season. So for me, Brian Mbeumo at 7 million is definitely worth a look at. And I think he could be a bargain player if he can replicate last season performance. So keep an eye on Brian Mbeumo. It's going to be interesting. Of course, we've got to look at the preseason game as well. But I know indeed Brentford don't really have a good fixtures, but after game week 5, it's a run up. It's a quite fairly easy one. And you can even argue first 3, you get Crystal Palace home and Southampton at home. Those are really pretty good fixtures as well. So overall, I think probably deserves a spot in a lot of people's team. And then you can definitely look at him after a few weeks and see what he's positioned at Brentford. And then a few of the interesting players that I would love to mention to keep an eye on that is, first one is Bruno Fernandes. I think, right, Bruno, it is very interesting. Same thing with Rashford. Last season, United were crap. We know they were crap, right? And they're not going to be crapper than that. Because there's no way. I believe Eric Ten Hag's coaching ability. And I think Bruno, he's on penalty. He's going to be the main number 10 for United. Even last season, they got 10 goals, 9 assists, right? Consistent 160 plus point performance. He's the one to look out for me, because 8.5 million, he's been that price for 2-3 seasons. I know he's gonna be is in consideration with 8.5 million. You could get other players like Anthony Gordon, Eze, etc. But I think you look at it, I think Bruno is gonna be in a more important role at Man United this season, since they're trying to push higher to move to top four to get the Champions League football. I think Bruno is a very, very key part in this Man United team. So he's definitely an eye to keep. He's definitely a player to keep an eye on. To keep an eye on. Add him to your watch list. He's on my watch list. So yeah, Bruno Fernandes is the first interesting player for me. And then second player, I don't think I've mentioned him. Again, it's another Man United player, and that's Luke Shaw. I think Luke Shaw, we saw him what he can do when he's healthy, right? He didn't play for England at this Euro, but we know if he's fit, he's going to be the number one choice left back for Man United, and we know what he can do. He's very, very solid left back. Even you can argue he's one of the top five, top three left back in the world if he's healthy, and he's got the attacking threat you needed. He can do crosses. He can go. He can go overlap with Marcus Rashford, and he can do crosses into the box, and with to Rasmus Højlund, and he can score. You can see with England he can score. So Luke Shaw is definitely interesting, even if he can keep all the injuries out from him. So I think Luke Shaw is another player that is very interesting for me. So keep an eye on Luke Shaw. I think if he's fit, he plays for United at 5 million price. He's absolutely worth a try for me. Yeah, Luke Shaw. And then the third player is a Liverpool player who got slipped past through quite a lot, and that is Dominic Szoboszlai. Because last season under Jurgen Klopp, we didn't see much from Szoboszlai because the way Klopp play a high line, and although he's a number 10, but not all attack is coming out from him, more from the wing and then from Darwin Núñez or Cody Gakpo coming down to the midfield. He's got 3 goal for assists last season, which is not what he's done at RB Leipzig when he played that number 10 role. But under the new coach Arne Slot, whose play style is more like Pep Guardiola, I think Szoboszlai is gonna he's gonna get more burden on his shoulder. He's gonna be that number 10 for Liverpool, and I think I've seen a lot of Arne Slot ball in Feyenoord. He likes to use a good number 10 to get good attack around, make it work for the team. So I think Szoboszlai this season could have a blowout season for me. That might be a little bit biased, but I think Szoboszlai under Arne Slot can perform better for me. Of course, we're going to wait and see again the preseason games. With good fixtures for Liverpool, I think 6.5 million, he's worth a look at. He's a bit like, I mean, he's going to be better than Declan Rice or Rodri if you really want to ask me. And he's going to start for 30 plus game, I believe. We see the Liverpool training video, how good his stamina is. So I think Szoboszlai, based on what I just said, I think he's an interesting player to keep an eye on as well. Yeah. And then the last player to keep an eye on is another forward from Leicester City, which is Jamie Vardy. I know he's old, he's an old head, but we know he's goal threat. We know he can score. He's played 35 games for Leicester last season. He's got 19 goals. He's going to start at number 9 if he's fit. So Jamie Vardy, we see what he's done in Premier League. 5.5 million, definitely worth a look at. If he can play 30 plus games this season, I think he's worth a try at 5.5 million. That's a pretty cheap price. So him and João Pedro are 5.5 million players forward I would look at if you want to have one. So Jamie Vardy to keep an eye on. Also see Leicester game, how Leicester preseason plays out. They play against Villarreal today. So we're going to wait and see how Leicester lines up and how they play. Yeah. So now we're moving on to the void category of the players. And the first one is a player that used a lot last season. That is Marcos Senesi. We've seen he scored 4 or 5 goals last season. He's got 102 points. He's one of those defenders, 4.5 million defender last season where everybody goes for. But at 5 million price tag, just too expensive for me. I don't see a reason you go for Marcos Senesi this season. He got 4 goals, 5 assists. But I don't think he can replicate that with only expected goal involvement is 4.25, and he got 9 attacking returns. I don't think Marco Senesi is a option for me. At 5 million, he's just too expensive. The second player I'm going for is Jan-Philippe Mateta. We know he got a crazy, crazy run at the end of last season. Last game, he's got 28 points, and he's got 29 points in the double game week. I've got him, and I've captained him. So I've got like 170 points that season, which is the highest I've ever got. He's got 16 goals, 7 assists. But the XG is only 10.84, and the XA is only 1.3. So that makes me question. He's probably overperforming for me. And then 7.5 million. Jesus Christ, he's massively overpriced for me. Look who else is 7.5 million. You got Darwin Nunez, Richarlison at 7, Gakpo at 7.5, Solanke at 7.5. I think those are all better options than Jan-Philippe Mateta. But I might be wrong. We gotta see the preseason how it goes out. But I think he's massively overpriced for me, and I'm not gonna go for him. And the third player I am going to go for is going to be controversial, and that is Ollie Watkins. Watkins, again, top goal scorer in forward position, 228 points. We can see 57% people are going for him. But he's got 19 goals and 18 assists, and that 18 assists come from only 4 expected assists. I don't know if he can replicate it. I doubt he can replicate that. Goal threat, I'm not worrying about that. But it's assists what worries me a lot. So he might turn to be a drop down. He could get 19 goals again, but he might only get 4 or 5 assists. And I think for that and 9 million price tag, he's a bit overpriced. I think Alexander Isak and 8.5 are much better than him. And I think if you can see who Liverpool start, I think one of Gakpo or Darwin is going to be better than him, because I don't think he can get 18 assists again. So Ollie Watkins, it's an avoid for me. I'm not going to go for Ollie Watkins. At least for now, we got to wait and see again for the preseason. They do have a good opening fixture run despite the second game week for Arsenal at home. But at home, we know how good Villa is. So we got to wait and see for that. And then the player I will go for is going to be quite a surprise, which is Ben White. 6.5 million, second most expensive defender in this season's FPL, only next to Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think he's good. He's a good player. He's a really, really good player. But I think Arsenal just did so good last season defensively, so that bumped all the defender price up. I think having one Arsenal defender is okay. You need one expensive defender in your team. If you're done for Trent, you can go for Ben White, but I think for 6.5 million, he's a no for me. I think his attacking threat can't match Trent Alexander-Arnold. He probably can't even match Josica Gvardiol. And 6.5 million is just too expensive in my mind for Ben White. So I'm probably not going to go for him. If I'm going for not Trent, I'll go for Gvardiol instead, I'll say. So yeah, Ben White, a bit of an avoid for me. Not going to look at him so much. And then the last player I'm going to go for is another forward, which is Ivan Toney. 7.5 million. We know what he can do when he plays. If he plays, he's on penalty for me. The no-look penalty in England for England is phenomenal. It's shocking. But we don't know if he's going to stay at Brentford. If he goes otherwhere, he's going to be the penalty taker. I don't know. And because this summer transfer market is weird for me, because no one is buying Ivan Toney. Brentford asked for 70 million. Now they cut down to 50 and still no one wants to buy him. So I'm not sure what the future of Ivan Toney looks like. And plus the opening fixtures for Brentford are not good. They have Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool in their first 5 game weeks, like we just said with Mbeumo. So I don't know if Ivan Toney can get enough attacking returns at the start of the season, or he's going to go elsewhere. I don't know. So that's an avoid for me at this point. Of course, in the next few game weeks, this could change. But so far, Ivan Toney is an avoid for me. And that's it. That concludes today's video. I've walked you through some of the bargain plays, I think, and some of the interesting and avoid player. And I plan to do a series later on where I say where I look at all 20 teams for you guys, or 20 teams. For example, I look at Arsenal, and then I'm going to tell you who to look at, who to avoid. I'm going to do all 20 teams in later the series, so check that out. There's gonna be another draft coming out soon with Haaland in the team, and I'm also gonna do a draft with both Haaland and Salah, and without none of them. So we're gonna wait. It's gonna come out in the future very soon. And so thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll keep you an update, and also I'll post my drafts and thoughts on Twitter as well. So thank you guys, and hit the subscribe button. Bye bye.